You know, I'm too stressed to play my game. My addiction is that's different. You know, that's just pumping heroin into the system and making it so I can't notice anything. But I'm not too stressed to talk, and yeah, in a lot of ways, that's probably what I actually need is human contact or something along those lines. This is what I do in place of it, except for a few moments on Friday nights when I'm drunk out of my mind. In general, I I responded to somebody's post, a response to one of my videos, um, with something. Maybe the misery is the point. Maybe the pain and misery are the point of it all. It's kind of funny. It's that kind of dichotomy that I have, right? There are always these opposing duels within me. And in this case, it's like, look, I don't think there's any point. I don't think there's any reason behind it all. But then I come back with a comment like that, which exposes my more mystical side or whatever. But that's something that, like, I just can't believe in, right? To me, the pain and the misery, these are evolutionary tools that serve a purpose, okay? And they do have a point, and I can kind of suss that out, right? Things like emotional pain come as with physical pain, but they use the same pathways, etc., to provide a learning mechanism. You know, don't do that again. That was bad for you. You know, it made you feel horrible. You're less well. You're less able to spread your genes, or whatever. And obviously, you know, that factors in and becomes a survival mechanism in a way that, like, nothing else does. But there's still a part of me that's always kind of reaching up and saying, you know, at some level or another, there has to be a purpose, there has to be more, all that shit, right? And, you know, I think that's why some people think that I'm maybe fertile ground for their particular religion of choice. So far, that has been not exclusively, but the vast majority from Christians. But, you know, the vast majority of my viewership is from the West, and Christianity has kind of ruled that for the whole time. Now and then I get, you know, somebody with Buddhist views or whatever. You know, I've never had anybody, because my own views, if I can express them, are probably closest to some sort of animism more than anything else, really. Some sort of belief in, like, a universal spirit that's just the communion of, you know, all the elements and everything together in some sort of emergent form, which doesn't really personalize you, right? Like, it's not like, oh, but what's my purpose? It's just part of all of this shit, you know? However, I did base my magic system in my role-playing game on those ideas, in the sense that, like, you were trying to bargain with the spirits that sort of cluster around, just the same way that matter clusters together. That creates sort of a focus for the same these energies and whatever they are, and so even something that doesn't seem to have an intelligence, nor certainly an ability to do X, Y, or Z, you might be able to coax it into it. And that was kind of the idea behind it. Now, that was just the underlying magic system, as opposed to the one that the actual characters in the world would believe in. So, But that was how I kind of fueled everything. And for whatever reason, there's something aesthetically appealing to me about that. But when I look at me saying something like the misery is the point, it's not. I mean, it's baked in and everything, but I shouldn't glorify it. If I truly believed the things, though, that logic and everything tell me, I would just say, fuck it, why don't I just enjoy? It really is that easy, right? It really is. And I know someone, maybe it was the same person, maybe it was someone else, I think it was someone else, put the obvious, which is just go do something. Yeah, but I can't fucking do something. That's the problem, right? And even simple things are becoming harder and harder to do. And it's not like I haven't tried. I went on and fucked with my wood several times over, not very recently, not this past week or so. But, I try to do something physical or whatever, try to get into a habit. It just doesn't take, And you could say, well, it's a matter of will. Yeah, it is, but I'm not good at that. I'm just, I have will for certain things and not for others. I have will to be able to shut down and do something horrendous, but not the will to like kind of change my habits intentionally. And it's almost like I have to be charmed into these things, right? In the sense of it has to make me feel so much better that I want to keep doing it. And the only things that tend to do that are very, very addictive things, right? I've always been susceptible to certain kinds of addictions of habit. And not so much, well, I mean, I got my caffeine, coffee does it too, but tea is the more important. I got my tobacco. Obviously I could get hooked on something. I'm not sure how much that's really a physical addiction. In either case, I don't know that it's not. I know that quitting is not pleasant, but when it comes to things that sort of engage my brain in some sort of way, those are the things that can really get me addicted. It's funny, I was never into doing it, but like that Pokemon Go thing, that might have actually caught me. But I'm not a phone person, so it wouldn't. But like just going out for walks or something like that, my mind ends up going into thinking about shit, and that's fine, but I've done that my whole life. And it's just, it's hard to say, oh, I really liked that. Now, something that I did really like doing was sitting out on my porch and listening to music and drinking and having a good old cigar or whatever. But that's something where I'm using up some expensive resources, plus I'm eating up a lot of time, and I don't really feel like it's particularly good for me, but it's something that I took pleasure in. I take a lot of pleasure in reading. Right now, not so much, but because my mind, is not in a state where I can just settle down. But I don't do it anymore, right? But I know that as soon as I start reading something I'm enjoying, I'm just, so drawn into it and everything and really love it. Now that something is almost invariably fiction or, I don't know, some well-written nonfiction, but what it's not is game roles. What it's not is is stuff where, I'm trying to learn or better myself or anything like that. It's just for entertainment reason more than anything else. And fiction tends to draw me in better. And, that's what it's designed to do, right? It's designed to addict you into this story. Just like, the computer game I'm playing is designed, well, the couple that I'm playing now are designed to hook you in and make you, keep coming back each time. Just like social media is designed to hook you in and bring you in. By the way, I'm back on Facebook now, but like, that break and the fact that I have other things to do while I'm on the computer watching videos or listening to videos, I'm just like, I'm not really into it anymore at all. Like, I don't know how much I was into it before, but I had sort of this, compulsion to get on every couple hours or whatever and see if anybody said anything. But anyway, I guess the point that I was trying to get at through all these, meanderings and detours is that everything that I sort of believe in, any angle I look at it from, it makes no sense to allow myself to be miserable. In a way, I can justify things like not taking care of my health and letting myself go to crap in the hopes that I die soon. But I shouldn't be miserable in this time, right? I shouldn't let these things, I don't know. So I'm not sure what I'm trying to do with my misery. And it certainly isn't. So unless there is some Judeo-Christian type God up there and is as evil as portrayed in the holy books, well, especially the Old Testament, but you look at some stuff in the New Testament is also pretty ugly when it comes down to it. Not a lot. Not the stuff people really pay the most attention to, but things like Revelations, that's nasty shit. That's Old Testament style of nastiness, right? That's the kind of trying to loop it back to that Old Testament God. And are you gonna throw that out? It's not orthodox, not by anyone's religion these days. Although, a bunch of supposed Christians seem to throw out all the teachings of Jesus in order to I don't know, take those more vengeful type of attitudes towards stuff, and have turned in many cases have turned Christianity into kind of I don't know what to call it, a wealth cult or something like that. There was a movement of that sort in Calvinism, which was sort of, if you're doing well, it's a sign that you're favored, right? But this is much, much worse. This is along the lines of I knew some Buddhists. In fact, my karate sensei was one of these, who had this sort of, if you do these things, good things will happen to you. No bullshit, right? That's kind of going against the purpose, right? If I meditate every day and, practice my Buddhist chants and everything, I'll become wealthy and get lots of pussy. that's anathema. It's kind of along the lines of, if I practice Christianity well, I'll become wealthy. If I'm a good Christian, I'll become wealthy. That seems so alien to the whole, it's harder for a wealthy man to get into heaven than for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle type thing, right? It's like, no, there's a reason that monks forsook the physical world and suffered the hardships. And, there are things that take it beyond orthodoxy, and that's the sort of Cathar side of me. I don't know where it came from, but as soon as I started seeing Catharism, I'm like, shit, that really aligns in some ways. First of all, if I'm going to believe in anything in the fucking Bible, that's kind of the viewpoint I come to looking at it as, is like, wow, there's something really nasty and evil out there, and it is the thing that, like, a lot of people quote. It is that Old Testament God and the God of Revelations as well. And sort of the idea that, like, this world is the evil world, and it was created by the evil God, and that to become true, you have to become, for them it's light, but to me it's very similar to that sort of animist spirit. But in none of those cases, like in any angle that I look at, the misery isn't the point. It's no more the point than eating is the point, or fucking is the point, or shitting is the point, It's just, those are all things that can be explained by evolutionary biology, or biology in general, in most of those cases. And that if there is some sort of point, first of all, well, let's take a look at it from the Christian point of view. All right? God moves in mysterious ways. We cannot hope to understand what his true purposes and goals are. Yeah, well, maybe his true purpose and goal is for us to rebel, right? He knew what was going to happen in the Garden of Eden shit, and he made it so. Right? He put a prohibition down that he knew was going to be violated, instead of either taking the temptation away or simply not saying that this was a horrible thing. The knowledge of good and evil. You think that would be useful to someone if they were moral? But no. That's the God of do what I will, or I will punish you, and no explanation, and with the foreknowledge that you're going to violate it, and with, about the worst punishment that a Christian can imagine, right? So, from that point of view, is the misery the point? No, just following rules is the point. Follow those orders. Do what God tells you. Well, God hasn't come down and told me. Yeah, but do what the Bible tells you. Men wrote the Bible. Well, they were moved by God. How do I know that? Because I tell you. Well, I don't believe you. But to things that I'm more aligned with, what about any of the mysticism that I sort of embrace, this more animistic type side of things? Well, it doesn't care. when it comes down to it. If it has any purpose or anything, again, it's very much like that naturalistic view, the completely atheist and um, I will only see, what can be shown, right? You got to prove it to me. And they're basically in complete alignment as far as I can see, and it makes no difference whether I suffer or not. I'm violating certain natural dictums that are sort of presented to animal life. I'm not scrabbling out there trying to spread my genes or anything along those lines. But I don't view that as bad any more than I view a rainstorm as bad. It's just, sometimes the natural processes work one way, sometimes they have other effects, and this little mixture that is inside of me, it does things a certain way, is accepting the misery better than moving against it? Why should I? So one of the other things that I take as sort of a moral compass is aesthetics. And simply what is appealing to me, aesthetically though. And that's important, right? It's not appealing to me aesthetically to be drunk and happy all the time, as an example. But I'm not sure. The first thing is, I'm not sure that it's aesthetically unappealing to me to be miserable. And in fact, that might be better than other options. For example, here's one. I viewed when I was working and probably happier overall, certainly less miserable, had something to occupy my time, had a source of income, had more human contacts and everything. I viewed what I was doing there as aesthetically less appealing than when I was wandering the streets in a fog, mental fog, and the mystical aspects were hitting me more. Or when I was going out for walks and just thinking, or when I'm playing my games, my board games. Here's the problem. I think this is a big part of my conflict. I very much view what I'm doing by playing Raid, by indulging in this addiction, as aesthetically unpleasing. And I think that's, in a way, the biggest conflict in there. Now, I also view my inability to do certain things as aesthetically unpleasing. My tendency towards sloth, or whatever it is, that is preventing me, or that has prevented me, like I should have visited my father sometime in the past few years. There's no question about that. The fact that I didn't. Now, it's easy. The problem is that there are so many pain points involved in making that choice that it becomes a very hard choice. And I mean, they can go from the banal to like something like what'll happen to my food? You know, right? Like, I have to figure, I'd have to like arrange very carefully a schedule as to the food and situation. Um, what if something bad happens to my house while I'm gone? It's unlikely. Uh, some level of pure laziness, I think, or just such adherence to my habits, my patterns of life, that breaking them even a little bit, and that's a big deal. So I don't find anything aesthetic about being static in my patterns. Yet that is probably the single thing that, most constrains me and chains me down. I don't know. I'm just rattling around ideas here. But and that's the thing then. So what my morals are sort of based on isn't very powerful for me. Strangely enough, it's the simple rule-based ones that are more potent. The ones like what the Old Testament God gives you, right? Except the only one that I feel like I really, really believe in out of all of them, well, I'd say there's maybe a collection of sort of core beliefs. And they can all be kind of summed up as honesty. Um, but it's not absolute. I'm willing to be dishonest as a joke, to portray something that I don't believe, kind of trolling type stuff. I'm willing to lie in certain circumstances when it's definitely, when it's a situation where it's like, oh shit, um, but that is one that I do see. See, here's the thing. I see the honesty as an aesthetic thing, though. Like being on time, right? I don't know. So I mean, it does have its tendrils in the things that I follow, in what rules that I do try to follow. But there's a lot of other things where, just like this one just didn't gel for me, Uh, and then I'm left with, yeah, I desire at some level or another. For example, I really like to eat. I really like to eat. And not anything fancy or anything. I just like to shovel food into my mouth. But, I know that there are reasons I shouldn't do that. I'd run out of food quickly. It's expensive. It's bad for me. And it's all those things that kind of stop me, I think, more than, well, although, aesthetically I find fat absolutely disgusting. Therefore I find myself absolutely disgusting. But so again, it may have its little hook in me, but I don't, Although I do find something attractive about the completist seat, because and again, this is the Cathar in me. I see a sort of transformation through denial. Um, and again, you could kind of put it with the Buddhist ideas and whatnot. Self-denial, uh, deny myself even thought. I don't know. Anyway, just some more babbling for whatever it's worth.